Hi, sixth graders. Here we go, still on Unit 6. This topic is adding integers. Our learning target is being able to add integers. Adding integers with the same sign, so meaning that they both are negative or they're both positive. We already know how to add integers or add positive integers, so we're not even going to cover that. You've been doing that since kindergarten. Now it's talking about adding them if they're both negative. So one way is that we can use a number line. So if we're going to do -3 plus -2, we start at 0, move 3 units left to get to -3. So we go here, get to -3, and then move 2 more units left, which is -2, and then we end up at -5. So -3 plus -2 is -5. If we have -5 plus -7, we start at 0, we go to -5, and then we add -7, so go 7 more to the left, would be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So plus -7, we would be at -12. -10 plus -4, so again, start at 0, go all the way to -10, and then add or go 4 more to the left, so we would get -14. So if we're adding integers with the same sign, so if they're both negative, basically what we're doing is adding the two numbers together and then add the negative sign. So both negative, add together, keep the negative sign. Basically, that's what we do if they're both negative. Additive inverse. So please write additive inverse property down. The sum of any number and its additive inverse is 0. Or basically the additive inverse is the opposite, is what I usually like to call it. So 5 plus -5 is 0. If we have a number line and we start at 0 and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So start at 5 and then we go back 5 to the left, we will end up at 0. Or if we have -10 plus 10, we get 0. -54 plus 54, we get 0. So the sum of any number and its additive inverse is 0. Adding integers with different sign. This is where it gets a little bit more tricky. So if we have 5 plus -3, we can use a number line. So we start at 0. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll get to 5 because we go 5 to the right because it's positive. And then we go 3 units to the left because it's negative. So then I go back 1, 2, 3, and we end up at 2. So 5 plus -3 is 2. -3 plus 2, again, start at 0. This time we want to get to -3, so we go 3 to the left because it's negative, and then add 2, so go in the opposite direction. We end up at -1. Another way that we can do this, so if I look down here, 5 plus -3 equals 2. I can drop the signs. So I'm just going to drop the signs and have 5 and 3 and subtract it. I get 2. And then I look at my 5 and my -3, and whichever has a higher absolute value, meaning if I took 5 and -3, the absolute value here is 5, the absolute value is 3. So whichever has the higher absolute value, which is this, That's the sign that I'm going to take, so it stays positive, and it's 2. Basically, I drop the signs. Whichever number is higher, that's the sign that I keep that it was in the original problem. If I look at this one, negative 3 plus 2, so drop the signs. Oops. So drop the signs. I have 3 minus 2. I get 1. 3 is bigger than 2, and 3 is negative, so that's why it's negative 1. Let's do a few more using that strategy. So 6 plus negative 7. This time I'm going to take the bigger, so I'm going to take 7 minus 6, and I get 1. And I know that 7 is greater than 6. When I drop the signs, 7 is greater than 6. So I keep that sign, and it makes it negative 1. I can also think, I don't have to draw a number line all the time, but I can also think that in my head, like I went 6 positive, but then I have to go back to the left 7. So back 6 plus 1 more, and that's why I end up at negative 1. Another way that I know that it's going to be negative is because there's more negatives than positives. So my answer has to be negative. Negative 15 plus 19. So I'm going to do 19 minus 15 equals 4. 19 is greater than 15 and it's positive, so my answer stays 4. Also, 19 is greater, or there's more positives than negatives, so that means my answer is 4. One other way that I want to show you how to add integers, this might help some of you. If I have, let's say I have negative 4 plus 6, I can literally draw 4 negative signs and then 6 positive signs, because I have 4 negatives right here, 6 positives, so I just showed it by doing 4 dashes with negative, 6 positives. We know that a positive and a negative added together equals 0. So then if I go through and I can see, well, that cancels each other out, that cancels each other out, that cancels each other out, that cancels each other out. I have nothing else to cancel out my 2 positives, so I end up with positive 2. If I do one more, how about negative 5 plus 1? I can do 5 negatives, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 positive. That cancels out, so I'm left with 4 negatives. So whichever strategy works for you, number line, the subtraction, and then figuring out the sign, or the negatives and positives, we'll write it like that, model, like actually drawing out negatives and positives. Whatever works for you right now at this moment, that's what you should use. Okay, I want you to practice without using number lines. So you figure out, or if you want to do a couple with number lines, and then you figure out which strategy works for you. I want you to try all 6 of these on your own, or watch me do a couple and then do the rest. But the more practice you have on your own, the better. So here we go. 7 plus negative 1. 7 minus 1 is 6. There's more positives than negatives, so my answer stays 6. Negative 8 plus 3. 8 minus 3 is 5. There's more negatives than positives, so negative 5. 2 plus negative 15, so I'm going to do this one first. 2 plus negative 15, so 15 minus 2 gets me to 13, but it has to be negative because there's way more negatives than positives. And if I think in my head, again, here's 0, I'm starting at 2, and I'm adding negative 15, which means I'm going 15 steps to the left. That's quite a bit. So 2 jumps to get to 0 right away, and then I know I have to go 13 more. So 2, 13, all the way to the left, because this together equals 15. So that's negative 13. And then negative 13 plus negative 2. So then we know if they're both negative, we just add them together, and then we keep the sign. We can also look back here, and I can see I have 2 plus negative 2, which is 0. That cancels out. So then I end up with negative 15. All right, 10 plus negative 2. Let's move that over. 10 plus negative 2, or negative 12, sorry. So 12 minus 10 is 2. There's more negatives, so negative 2. 13 plus 18, so 18 minus 13. Sorry, negative 13 plus 18. So 18 minus 13 is 5. There's more positives than negatives, so 5 is our answer. And then negative 14 plus negative 6 plus 6, right away, I can see that that's 0. So my answer is going to be negative 14. Lastly, you do not need to write this down except whatever you feel like you want to write down to help keep you remember this. Actually, there might be a couple things that I want you to write down, but let's go through this together. So the integers 5 and negative 5 are opposites because they are the same distance from 0. 2 integers that are opposites are called additive inverses. So remember that opposites and additive inverses, those are the same. Any number and its additive inverse is 0. Example, 5 plus negative 5 is 0. So as long as you have this in your notes and an example, that would be great. Positive plus a positive is always positive. That's what you've known forever. You probably don't need to write that down. Negative plus negative is negative. Add the numbers, keep the sign. This is something that I would write down. Positive plus negative, subtract the smaller from the larger and take the sign of the larger number. This is something that I would write down. 2 plus negative 3 is negative 1. And then a negative plus a positive, we do the same. Subtract the smaller from the larger and take the sign of the larger number. So these two would be the important things to write down because this one is basically the same as the other one. All right, so make sure you write those down, have some good examples, make sure your notes are in class, and we'll see you tomorrow.